3 things that you can do to improve your shooting technique and also not look like a complete noob on the range. This is going to be geared predominantly towards rifle shooting. However, there will be some crossover between rifle and pistol. If you want to see a dedicated video on how to improve your pistol shooting, I have a 5-step video, and I'll have it linked in the description box down below for your viewing pleasure. Quick disclaimer, I was never in the service. I was never a cop, I was never in the military, I've never been in combat with a firearm, and I hope to never be in combat with a firearm. And because of that, I do not consider myself a tactician, and that's not the direction that we're going to be taking in today's video. There are many more people out there that are much more apt to teach you from that perspective, and that's just simply not me. Today we're going to be talking about something that I'm very familiar with, which is raw anatomy and physiology, especially if you're female. I'm sorry. That was really uncalled for. But today we're going to be focusing more on some of the physiological challenges of shooting a rifle. Specifically, a lot of the black rifles tend to be a little bit heavier than some things that a lot of people are used to. And I think that there's a unique perspective that I can add to the discussion on why we do what we do when we do it. Along those same lines, second disclaimer, I am super anti-stance. The whole static shooting position type thing where you choose a weaver or isosceles stance, I'm really not into that. And the one thing that I would say that I do take tactically to mind is that if you watch any type of violent encounter video, it's almost always a dynamic environment. So the whole idea of staking your ability to shoot more effectively on this pre-programmed stance that you have to use at a range or something like that is complete fallacy. And I don't think that it adds to the discussion to talk about how we place our feet and things like that. I think that a lot of it, as long as you can connect yourself with the ground in some way, shape, manner, or form, you're gonna be all right. And there are things that we can do elsewhere in the body to build a good shooting position, even if that shooting position is mobile. Number 1, the chicken wing. This thing out here. You can ask anybody who's closely associated with me, a significant proportion of my caloric intake on a weekly basis comes from wings of the yard bird. However, they have no place on the range whatsoever. You probably shouldn't be eating on the range anyway. But what the chicken wing is actually a holdover from a different age, and most likely you received it because your daddy taught you to shoot wrong. That's where I got mine, is my dad taught me to shoot wrong. And that is simply because there was a shift in the technology about that time. And what I mean is not only the physical technology, but also the technology of the mind. And we started thinking about how to better orient ourselves when shooting and things like that. And you have to think back some years, and the best target shooting position was taught to be something like this, where we bring the rifle inside to the center line of our body, we support the rifle with an open hand or maybe even a clenched hand like this, but it is built on an bent elbow that then hangs from the shoulder muscles and maybe even dead ends into the side. And then we are turned profile to the target. And then that brings the weight of the rifle across the body to the center line and indexes it in the shoulder pocket. Well, we stopped doing that a while ago. And what we started to do was a more squared up approach where we would square the target to our shoulders, or our shoulders to the target, excuse me, and then we'd raise the rifle up like this. Now, by doing that, if we still do this chicken wing thing, this is no longer a strong position. It's actually a compromised position. If we look at this position, where we've got the elbow like this and this elbow out like this, if I were to rotate my body like this, you could see that basically those elbows are in similar positions. They're just offset 90 degrees from each other. And what that does is it creates a torsional effect. So that keeps the gun from rotating like this while it's locked into this position. Well, when we move to this position here, where we're more squared up and our arm is no longer pinned like this, it is more open, the rifle now becomes unstable with this out here like this. There's no adverse stabilizer to this arm out here. So what we've done is created a weak position. This gun is essentially supported by my offhand out here. So to counteract that, the best way to do that is to curl that elbow in, and now we've created a position where the rifle can be supported almost entirely by our shooting hand if necessary. We've now engaged the pec, the delt, the trap, and the, if done properly, the lat, the bi, tri, and all of the muscles of the forearm are now engaged in supporting this rifle here, versus before they were pretty much out of the equation, and the only muscles that we were using in this arm were these right here. So we've gotten that much more muscle mass put into the equation of supporting the rifle. So in order to create a very stable shooting position, my suggestion would be to pull that chicken wing in, save it for when you get home, pinch that pec in, curl that bicep, grab hold of the rifle, suck it in, and now you've got a very stable position to begin shooting from. And if you get fatigued, you always have the option of sucking that elbow closer to your body, just like we did over here with this one when we were talking about this shooting stance. We can do the same thing with this elbow, and now we've got a lot of surface area contact between the inside of our arm and our torso, allowing us to, again, more effectively support this rifle for a longer period of time. If you start to feel fatigue, this position should put a lot of stress on your delt out here, and it should put stress on your bicep. If you're feeling it elsewhere, if you're feeling it in your chest or in the middle of your back or anything like that, then this is a point in time where we should probably start discussing a little bit of weight training to try to increase that aptitude a little bit. This is a 7-pound rifle. It shouldn't feel that heavy in those areas. Those areas may need a little bit of work, a little bit of supplement to help improve your shooting game. Number two, we've all seen, and we see it predominantly in the female shooting crowd, especially the female shooting crowd that has been sort of like compelled to be there. Girls, don't feel intimidated by your guy friends that have taken you out and are basically forcing you to shoot. If you're not interested in it, you're not interested in it. You don't have a matronly obligation to be interested in the shit that we're interested in. All right, just throwing that out there. If you found yourself on this video, if your boyfriend's forcing you to shoot, your husband's forcing you to shoot, he's a douchebag. You don't have to go out and do that sort of stuff. But if you want to get better at it, the thing that we're talking about here is the lean back. And this is predominantly from two reasons. One, either the gun's too heavy and they put their hips into it to try to stabilize, or loud things about to happen, and we have natural human reaction to try to want to separate ourselves from this and the anticipation of that loud thing that's about to happen. So there's a lean back that occurs. Well, what happens when you lean back from the firearm is you've done three things. One, you've actually shifted the weight of the gun into your arms, which makes it feel even heavier. So don't do that. Two, it makes it very difficult to stabilize the gun. It'll walk around all over the place out here. You'll notice that if you do this and try to sight it, that the sight moves kind of all over the place, and that's because it's not stable. And then the third thing that it does is it also makes the gun recoil harder. And what I mean by that is you have set yourself up for failure because you are basically a bag of noodles when you're back here like this. You're limp. Everything's relaxed in this position. Forward lean into the gun ever so slightly. And what that does, by justifying your center of gravity forward ever so slightly, is it engages all the musculature from the waist up and then connects it to the ground via your feet. And what that does is, instead of having this gun back here like this, now if we engage ever so slightly, we can pull it in, and this gun moves very little. We've basically generated a big ball of springs for this gun to recoil against. So it's going to be much more comfortable. If you start to feel it, pull in your back, okay? Where you got this gun and you feel the weight of the gun in your back. Again, to echo the last point, it may be time to talk about, if you're serious about it, talk about a little bit of strength training to try to supplement the weaknesses that you're feeling. You should feel this position right here in your shoulder and in your arms. If you're feeling it anywhere else, then you should probably supplement those areas with a little bit of training. Number three, and I actually had to change my eye protection for this one because I want you guys to be able to see my eye, so that'll be pertinent here in a minute. And I think the best way to put this is to command your rifle not allow your rifle to command you. And this is often given in a lot of courses in the form of raise the rifle to your eye, not your eye to the rifle. And what I'm talking about is a lot of times you'll see somebody who's unexperienced or maybe new to shooting, they'll put the rifle in their shoulder and then they'll drop their head to the rifle. And that is incorrect. And this becomes a real problem if you're talking about somebody who's cross-eye dominant, which means that, for instance, they'd be right-handed and left-eyed. So they end up doing this kind of weird crap right here where they're just like torquing their face down onto the rifle. It gets really, really ugly, very uncomfortable, and it will compromise their shooting experience. I'm just gonna throw that out there for you. The best way to do that is to see the target, and this is where I'm gonna have you guys focus on my eye. You see the target, focus on the target, raise the rifle and the reticle to your eye, and shoot. So if we do this faster, we see the target, raise the rifle, and fire. Obviously, if we have time, we would move to a more advantageous position. Again, not a tactics discussion right now, but what we're talking about is raw anatomy. The problem that a lot of people have, especially with the AR type rifle, is that the height distribution of all the stuff that happens with it was originally designed to happen with body armor. When you talk about integrating body armor, so you've got another layer of hard stuff between you and the rifle. What that's going to do is it's going to shift the rifle forward, so farther out, farther past your center of gravity, and up. Now what we do to compensate for that is that we don't get to use the whole stock. So we don't even get this part right here. When you're not wearing body armor, you don't get this. You have to basically use half of the stock, and that's, you can see like this Mission First stock actually has a little dip in it to be able to, like for anybody who's like super tall, we can get that in our collarbone. If you look at me index this, I'm not going to do this on purpose, I'm literally just going to throw this up and shoot, and then we're going to analyze where the stock is in my shoulder. So see the target, raise the rifle up, fire. If I go to relax, you can see how much of an air gap there is there between myself and that stock. That is the proper positioning for an AR stock without wearing body armor. So a lot of people will feel that they need to justify this stock down like this into their shoulder pocket. You never really get the full shoulder pocket. And because of that, you can see how much lower this rifle is. I almost have to, like, this is actually very uncomfortable for me to get down here like this to get on that sight. Again, if you want to improve, see the target, raise the sight to the target, and shoot. All right, guys and gals, well, that about wraps up my dissertation on how to improve your rifle shooting. I hope you found it interesting and informative. If you did, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below. Like, share, pass it around to all your friends, tell them about the VSO Gun Channel, bring them into the fold. And I think there's a lot of people out there who have touched this topic previously. And this is just a little bit different perspective that I thought that I could add from a different walk of life. And I hope that you learned something here today. If there's one more thing that I could add to the list, a fourth thing that we could add that will not only improve your shooting technique, but also your life in general, and I've touched on this a few times in this video, it's taking an interest in your physical fitness as a whole. Becoming a stronger person will absolutely translate to improved shooting technique and other aspects of your life. Thanks for joining us here today on the VSO Gun Channel. I hope I did a good enough job that we'll see you back here again. And you guys know the rules. It is out of the box. So therefore, it can't go home with us, right?